is one of our favorite subjects. One of my personal favorites because I was very recently a first-time novelist, and there was several things that I did that were common to first-time novelists that you really want to avoid, especially if you want to get published. So in today's 30-minute tutorial, we're going to cover 8 habits first-time novelists should avoid. And these practices identify the writer as a beginner to seasoned readers and editors that usually undermine the story and don't really lend themselves to your writing talent. You're very talented. Finishing a manuscript is a huge milestone in any writer's career. It's nothing that we all go into lightly, and so we want to put the best face on our manuscript, make sure it's as professional as possible, but also has the passion that got us started on our journey to write our first manuscript, whether it took you 2 years, 7 years, or 13 years. We don't want you to be pegged as a beginner. And these, some of these are easy to avoid, and some of them are a little more insidious, right, Charlotte?
Right. And they really are curious habits that turn up because the longer you've waited to write that first novel, the more likely these things will show up in your novel. And so we might say that if you're between the ages of 14 and 24, you're not as likely to have as many of these as you are if you're over 24. But, and certainly as you get up there, you'll have more of these. You'll have them more intensely. Everybody seems to have these things. So what are they? Here's a list of them. We'll just look at them right now, what we're going to be going through. And they're promises, vehicles, backstory, opening with unattributed dialogue, jumpy chronology, too many characters, a distant narrator, and assumptions. And we'll give you some examples. This might actually sound entertaining because it is entertaining, but these kinds of misjudgments. But they're things you need to watch out for. They're things that actually acquisition editors talk about. And we don't talk about it with great glee, but we notice it. So that's where we're going to start today. And I'm going to start with the first one, which is promises. And this is something that I wrote in a piece that I was writing about my writing experience when I finished my first novel. I did this, promised myself that my first novel would have this and that in it, mention something about my mother, include a bit about my brother, use a favorite mentor's name as a character, even have a cat named after my cat at the time. Usually these promises show respect for various people in our lives, sometimes not. But the issue is it's promises, and it often turns up as backstory that we feel we have to tell, or people, characters with names that are very interesting and unfortunately have nothing to do with the main story. So you want to look at any kind of promises that you made yourself to write the novel. Write them down, look for them in your manuscript, and pull them out. Someone I know, a very, very good writer, wanted to tell the story of his father's heart attack. He felt this needed to be in there, had nothing to do with the story, and he got it in, and it was a beautiful piece of writing, had nothing to do with the story. We spent 3 days negotiating getting this set of scenes material out. And when it was out, he looked at me and I looked at him, and we both agreed the book was better.
And especially with a first-time novelist, your intentions are good going into writing a manuscript, but you really don't know, especially the first time, you really don't know what ultimately you're going to end up with. So it's very important to keep an open mind and have absolutes to a minimum when we're talking about what's included and what's not included in the manuscript, because first and foremost, story is king.
What's the story? Whose story is it? Keep asking yourself that, not while you're writing, but while you're reading and editing your work. Make sure that anything you keep is right along the storylines. We hear things about that you can't keep your darlings. Forget your darlings. Who cares about your darlings? Just stay close to the story. A lot of darlings belong in a book.
And writing is rewriting and revising. So where you start isn't necessarily where you're going to end up. So yes, you can make promises to yourself, but you'll end up breaking promises.
And the next one is usually used as an opening, and we're going to say vehicles. And what could that possibly mean? Well, literally it means cars and bicycles and boats and anything that moves. And figuratively it means vacuum cleaners and dishes to wash and even dreams. It is some activity that is done alone by the main character to give the main character time to tell his or her story. So we have the magnificent drive through the desert and the character noticing the different various plant life, fauna and flora, and thinking about the great philosophical makeup of the character's mind. Nothing is happening. It's a character alone. It's a character in a car. It's a character on a bicycle driving from one house to the other, thinking about what he or she is going to say when they get to the other house. Don't do that. One of the things you do with novels is you condense time. You take time that's without conflict, without other characters, without other features, and you take that information and bring it into scenes where something is happening.